Hello and welcome to another episode of Divination Detectives. It is me, myself, G, and a lovely Alex on the other end. And today we are jumping into the folklore and mythology of Philippines. Uh, Quick disclaimer, we do want to make something very clear that we mean no harm by talking about these things, the spirits, the energies, the beliefs. We are not ourselves of the culture of Philippines and we do not come from there, but we have immense respect. And we just want to preface by saying that it's a very wonderful and amazing thing to explore, but that we are not meaning to disrespect in any sort of way. So, with that being said, I'm gonna let Alex introduce us to our first creature. So, what do we have, Alex?
Yes, it's so nice to be back on our third episode. So exciting.
Yeah.
So we apparently with the Philippine Islands, there's many different little islands, different people, different languages. And it seems to me when I'm researching some of these things that they have a very rich culture in storytelling and folklore. And so there are actually a lot of mythical creatures to kind of choose from. There's many different stories about many different ones. So I did just want to say that because we're just going to barely skim the surface here and definitely encourage everyone listening to kind of explore on their own and see what else is out there because it's really interesting stuff. So the first one that I am going to talk about is called the Aswang. Okay. And when I was researching it, the Aswang can actually be an umbrella term for a few different creatures. And the main one that was coming up is a vampire like creature. And one of the characteristics of this and of the sightings, the consistency of the sightings, is that this creature can actually detach its torso from its body and fly away, kind of like a bat, like with wings. Okay.
Wait, what?
And yeah, very scary. I would not want to come across this thing. And it's really interesting to hear that these stories go back to, this, even there's recordings of the Spanish colonizers hearing about these creatures when they first, and I'm sorry, I don't have a year for that, but I'm assuming it's around the 14 or 1500s we're talking. And then there's actually even still, just within the last year, people reporting these creatures being seen. And if we think about islands, right, just in the world, they always kind of concentrate and kind of have their own like ecosystems, right, with different animals. And so, why would it be any different with their mythical creatures?
True. That's very
They
true.
have they're there for a long time. They evolve with the people, they evolve with the environment, and I think they're still there, kind of thing. So the Aswang is, yeah, like I said, going back to when colonizers were coming in and hearing about this, I'm sure the Filipino people were telling these stories for generation upon generation. Um, but this is when you kind of get into writing down the accounts and having real history about the sightings. So the Aswangs too are very linked to some of the I would say ruling class, linked to them and linked to their DNA. There was even talk about like people today having the same DNA as these Aswang type of creature. So I don't know exactly like if it maybe was a type of human that existed a long time ago, kind of like if you think of like a Neanderthal type of human that evolved and mated with others to get kind of Homo sapien. I wonder if like this Aswang was kind of like a creature that has lived here forever and kind of like, melded through and became more human like and actually lived human lives. There's a
Hmm.
lot of possibilities here. But the main story about the Aswang is, yeah, just kind of being out into, like, if you're out in the wilderness or out in the forest, and the night sets in, people would spot these creatures kind of like coming towards them or trying to scare them off and get them out of the forest. And the main thing is because I was talking about how they're vampire like, stories all kind of say about how they suck people's blood or they like suck out their entrails. Even reports
That's
of,
rough.
taking newborn babies from mother, or and sorry, in vitro babies out of mothers' wombs. There's this feeling of like sucking the life out of you or sucking you dry. And I'm just going to go back here where I saw. So yeah, so there was, good old Reddit, right? When you're researching, these Reddit comes up, and there's this woman that was telling a story of just 2 years ago that she was seeing something kind of like lurched up or sitting up on a roof, and she said, like, her dog, she saw it, her dog saw it, her dog started barking, and it was kind of just perched on the roof, but it looked kind of human, but also had like these wings kind of thing. And basically, when it was startled, um, she said it dropped down, like it just jumped right off the roof and scurried out into the forest. But she said it was very human-like. It almost looked like it had like these big, like kind of like wet looking, like gross wings that were on the top of it. So she's kind of saying like at the bottom it looked human, but at the top it was kind of like giant bat. Okay.
They can fly?
Can you imagine? I guess this one account said that it didn't fly away, but she kind of brought it up to her family later on, and the family was just kind of like, "Oh yeah, that was Aswang, and we've seen them for generations," kind of thing. Like, just stay away, don't engage. But they're definitely around, and that's kind of cool too, like to like think you have this crazy experience and then you like go to tell your dad and they're like, oh yeah, that's just whatever, like that's what we grew up with, that kind of thing. So it's very like common in their culture to just believe these things existed, and perhaps they are told in story to help explain different things like that are going on, especially if you're thinking of like pregnancy loss. There could be folklore surrounding that, and it's such a terrible thing. Of course, attaching a monster to it kind of makes sense in a way. But yeah, so the other part about the Aswang is, yeah, it's almost as if the ruling class is associated with the Aswang, but it kind of makes sense too because it's like the ruling class is trying to, suck the common people dry, like taking their money, taking their labor, just throwing them bones and not giving them land, that sort of thing. So it's really interesting to see these stories and try to put like practical reasons for them on it, but also when you actually have physical sightings of them that say they're supernatural, it really brings up those questions like, what is it? What is it?
Well, I feel like it's interesting that the first topic or the first being from the mythology we chose is also something that's very worldwide at the same time as it is very
Mhm.
specific to the Philippines, like Aswang in itself, but then the vampire-like or type creatures existed like across the globe in different ancient civilizations, in modern times. Like it's interesting because that all of that has to come from somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. It's like that's a tied, you're right. It's tied to different cultures to have these, yeah, vampire like, I mean, even I've even heard of things like from ancient Egypt that old pharaohs, about drinking blood and all of this thing to maintain their youth. Like you're right. There's all different cultures have vampire type stories.
Well, Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess, right? The
Oh yeah.
Hungarian countess that bathe in the blood of young maidens.
Mm, yeah.
Dude, that's a that's a creepy one, and that's a real one, and it's so much more creeper because and it's actually literally close to me, like maybe an hour drive away to where she was. So yeah, that's a creepy one. The Vlad the
Yeah.
Impaler, Dracula, another one.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are like real proven people in history, right? Even this Aswang thing, there are people that like they try to ward them off and they are mentioning garlic to do that, ginger and garlic on the windowsills. Interesting.
On the window. Okay, I've heard of putting things in the window sills before. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's like that garlic thing. It's a common like, anti-vampire thing, but here it is in the Filipino culture on a little island using garlic,
Hmm.
which makes sense. It's a very strong smelling herb and would last a long time to sit in the window.
And
But I wonder.
it's also antiseptic, right? So
True. Yeah.
if we are considering the aspect of just wounds and blood, like it purifies and it cleanses and
Mm,
hmm.
yeah.
Because it's all I
And
think it's
I like that
also
too. Oh, go ahead.
anti-inflammatory, right? Is it not? Or is it just antiseptic?
Probably, I would say probably, yeah. It's really good for your blood. I would say antibacterial more than anti-inflammatory because it like to me, garlic, like, yeah, it cleans out your blood. It cleans the toxins out of your body.
And
Um,
over here, it's always been
so
recommended for high blood sugar as well.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Because even like our family medicine doctor that worked in the practice before he went into pension would suggest like if you're experiencing high blood sugar, high blood pressure, and before you take any medicine, try and take a clove of garlic and see if that helps.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I actually know somebody who kind of went more extreme with the garlic, but he would eat like several cloves every single day. And I think he lowered his blood pressure problem. And there was something else that he was working on, but it had to do with like blood pressure mainly.
mm,
And yeah, that's just his go-to thing. He's like, my partner doesn't love it because I smell like garlic all the time, but he's like, I feel like $1,000,000.
okay.
It's
Well,
a really beneficial herb for sure.
if it helps him, that's the most important part. Forget about
Little
anything
side.
else. Yeah, that's true. But okay, Aswang. So
That's fine.
what are we gonna ask about them? Because I pulled some cards just about them,
Okay.
like whatever comes up, and it's looking interesting. It's definitely looking interesting.
I would love to know if the Aswangs are kind of the offspring or the ancestors of the ruling class. I would want to know that.
Oh, okay. So like ruling class in history or currently?
Um, I would say in history because I don't know the political landscape of the Philippines, but obviously like they were colonized by the Spanish at one point. So I feel like historically there would have been like leaders in the communities, or just the people that run things kind of before that. I would go back a little further, almost like an ancient indigenous species that is vampire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's an interesting pull because I'm just using the pendulum.
Yeah.
And I asked whether or not they were the offspring of the of the ruling families, and I also asked whether or not they're like a species of their own, like a separate, like subhuman or human parallel in some sort of way, but like a branch that sprung off and weird in a different direction. And it says yes on both accounts. And another piece of information that came through is it almost feels like some of them like adapted from feeding on blood or flesh and into like pulling the energy from people. And this is where the
Okay.
aspect of the rulers being Aswang comes into place, because it's almost like they adapted to not be noticed, to not be seen, to rather than feed off of blood, to feed off of energy, like an energy vampire. And it does that
Okay.
by suffering of people, and it can manipulate people. Because when I asked about them, I got the Princess of Cups and then Queen of Cups in reverse. And that to me is like heavy
Hmm.
water energy for one, and heavy manipulation energy, Queen of Cups in reverse. That's a manipulative bitch if we've ever seen one, because she's going to use that emotion. She's going to cry her way out of everything, and she's going to have a story. She's going to have a way to figure things out and spin it the way that she wants to and make you feel so sorry for her and believe her every
Yeah.
word. So to me, it almost feels like it was like a real creature of flesh and blood that
Mhm.
adapted to maybe not feeding from blood. And I feel like there might be still some leftovers, because it almost seems like with the Nine of Swords, I got the idea that they are probably hunting in the dark. And I think we're actually using the same deck this time
Yeah,
around.
we are. Yeah.
Hunting in the dark. So it almost feels like they're night bound creatures.
That's cool because I shit you not. I also got the Queen of Cups.
Shit, mine is.
um, I
Here we
shit
go.
you not. It's
Here
so
we.
crazy. So in this deck of the Queen of Cups, there's just like this, like she's just double water because queens are water, cups is water. So it's that absorbing, okay? And
Yeah.
also the blood, like the water is the blood. So I also got a yes card for, is it a separate type of creature? Is it its own species? And then I
Mm-hmm.
got this romance card. So it's almost like you were saying, like they were, I was feeling like they were marrying into, well, maybe
Mm-hmm.
not marrying, but procreating or creating with the humans or interacting with them, but probably on a basis where, yes, it's like, I will give you this stuff to feed you, and then you give us kind of like eternal life or more life. And it almost felt like they were working together with that ruling class.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the ruling class was like, yes, they were aware of them, but they weren't scared of them. They were like integrating with them so that everybody got what they want. But yeah, it's really interesting with that Queen of Cups and about the energy. It's like, yeah, they were able to suck it in. They were able to absorb other people's energy, like physically, or just kind of like being around them. Um, Very interesting to
Yeah.
get this
Oh, it
romance
would
card.
all.
It's like such an equal exchange.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah.
But I feel like it would, if they have the ability to sort of drain people to make them more miserable and more. Because if you're thinking
Mm,
about the current state of the world, is almost like the more subdued you are, the more willing you are to go along with the bullshit that the ruling are gonna
hmm.
propose. So if the ruling class historically was about that life, and it's like we want power, we want control, the more drained and the more helpless people feel, the more they will lean on the leader or the person in power to guide them, the more reliant they are going to be on them, and the more power they are going to be getting by from the people, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. I mean, some of these people, like they're scared to leave their house in the evening. They just pile all the kids in a room and stick garlic in their window, like how much more control could you get?
Quite literally.
Um, yeah. So that's what it is. It's like yeah, it's like they're helping the Aswangs in some way, but the Aswangs are, yeah, keeping the people in line for them. But yeah,
Quite
it's this
literally.
energy feeding. Yeah, that's very interesting. So, what else could we ask about them before we move on?
Mm, I think I would want to look into are do they still actively hunt for
Okay,
like
that's a good question.
for people blood? Because that's like I feel like what you I would want to know if I'm ever going to Philippines. I would just want to know, do I need to be on a lookout for for Aswang just jumping out and be like, hello, I want your blood. Let's see. So you said garlic does help with them, correct?
Yeah, they said garlic and ginger.
Garlic and ginger. Okay. I can make a pendant with that and carry that shit around.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'll just get a vial and put it around my neck. That would work. Could you get through TSA with that? Or would they be like, what the fuck is that? Why do you carry garlic? Is drugs?
Yeah, you might freak out a couple of people. Oh, just my vampire detection.
Yeah, just trying to
Don't worry
protect
about
myself
it.
from Aswang. And they're like, what? Vampires, dude, it's vampires. So the pendulum is swinging like crazy in regards to the question whether or not they're still actively hunting. Um,
Mhm.
in the direction of yes.
Um,
So I think they're still active. It's just very hidden
I
at
think
this
it's
point.
more it's a little bit like more incognito. I feel like they are still hunting, but I feel like I got a card here saying like asking for help. So I don't think they have like their helper humans like maybe they did a few hundred years ago, like in that
Mm-hmm.
ruling class that we were just talking about. So it feels like yes, they're more out on their own, so they possibly would be like less powerful. But I feel like they're still out there. Um, and because I also got like this magician reverse card, which is kind of like more manipulative energy. So it's like they have to manipulate a little bit more than what they used to, or um, like maybe the areas that they're going to is like less hard for them to hide in. And maybe there's like not as many of them around, but it still feels like there's a few around that obviously there are still sightings happening in the different areas. So, but it's like a little bit less of like they're less powerful, is what I would say.
Mm-hmm. That actually makes a lot of sense. Because I feel like historically there would be more fear because people feel
Yes.
helpless. And now
Yeah.
you have, have guns, you have different artillery, you have
Yeah.
means of protecting yourself and fighting against that. So it actually makes a lot of sense.
And if you think about the fear too, they would have been able to feed off the fear. So if less people believe in them, less people are telling stories about them, it creates less of that fearful energy for them to feed on. So that's I think what they're getting less manipulative. It's like they have to come up with more ways to find fearful energy and maybe it's just then you're going to see them hanging around in very low vibrational spaces rather than just like in your backyard on a tree
Mm-hmm.
because it's like there's no fear around around the people as much as there used to be and there's no people helpers in the ruling class pushing that fear. So for some reason the word fear is coming up a lot, so I feel like they definitely feed off the fear more than anything.
That
Or
that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah. Because it almost feels like it's adaptation, it's changing, and it's being able to adapt to the conditions. Like if you cannot actively hunt as much as you would, it's adapting to what you can. It's like the what is it? The fisher wolves, where they have adapted to catching fish by the sea rather
Mm,
than hunting for like deer or something else, because that's where they have more of that um in the wild. Well, in the wild, they're all in the wild. Jesus Christ, they have better chances of catching a fish than they have catching a prey
Mhm.
on land, so they adapted to hunt in the water. So it almost feels like that aspect.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. All right. Do you want to let's move on to another creature because there's so many amazing ones. What do you have for the next one?
So the one that really caught my eye and I am so obsessed with is Tikbalang,
Hmm.
and that is a horse-like creature. So if the closest that I can describe it to is if you imagine the Wendigo. You've probably seen like images of Wendigo and stuff like that, like the bony creature
Hmm.
with the head of a what was it, a stag or a deer, right? And
Okay. I don't know
imagine,
if I have seen that one.
okay, so but if you Google like Wendigo, that's kind of the image that
Okay.
you're gonna see. So for everyone at home, if you're Googling that, imagine that sort of lanky and tall humanoid creature, though opposed to Wendigo, it's not having its like parts of flesh missing, but it's like a full body, and
Mm.
it has a head of a horse.
Hmm.
It has a head of a horse and hooves of a horse as well. So it can be sort of on two legs or on four, but it has a hooves. so
The images for this, yeah, the Tikbalang images, that this is a creepy looking thing.
it's a creep, definitely a creepy looking thing. So
Mm.
there is a couple of different theories as to what it is. One of the main ones that jumped out as I was researching is that it is a spirit of an unwanted child
Wow.
that sort of runs out and becomes this creature, right, after the child is left or abandoned. And the other one is that they're actually souls of trees, because in
Oh.
certain retellings of the stories is said that each tree has a guardian. So they're also associated with trees. They're also associated with protecting the forest, protecting the nature. And they're said to sort of guard their tree, or they have their tree. So it's said that they're the soul of a tree, so a tree spirit in the form that's sort of a mix between a human and a horse. They are trickster spirits as well. So in the wild, they will try and lead you down the wrong path. They will try to sort of get you lost and confused and discombobulated in the nature, and just feel, kind of lose your sense of direction and lead you off the path. They aren't really known for um, harming humans. They're more so just tricksters, and again, just be lead you off the beaten path. It is said that they smell of burning hair, and another name for them is phantoms of the mountains. So I feel like they sort of withdrew from civilization, and again, it's more so about the nature. It's more so about being away from the civilization. So we have that. And one other piece of information that I was able to get is when you're going out into the woods, into the forest alone, in order to avoid them or to not get led astray by them, is to
Mhm.
wear your shirt inside out.
No way.
Which is a funny one, but it's like, yeah, they actually that's the actual belief. So I'm like, okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. It's fun because it's also like the portrayals of them are also just like these cheeky things that just have fun and play around. And if we consider that if they're the spirit of a child, it almost makes sense because it's like that tricky. childish vibe of just playing around and being innocent, and again, just being a child. So it makes perfect sense.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
So I
Yeah, it
guess
definitely is in the rainforests, right? They have a lot of jungle there. So,
yes, and mountains.
and I believe too, like if you have a very old tree that's been there for like 1,000 years, yeah, there's going to be energy attached to that and definitely protectors. I like that vision of having a protector for the trees.
Mm-hmm. So should
I
that
like that it's
be?
not like, hurting people, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely could hurt you if you led you down the wrong path and got you lost.
Yes, yes. So should we ask then, are they what are they child spirits of unwanted
Yeah.
children, or are they tree spirits? Should that be our question?
Yeah, let's figure that out.
Okay.
Let me see. The cards I got were kind of like interesting. I'm using this energy oracle deck. So when I was asking about the kids, it didn't seem like attached to that.
Mm-mm.
But when I asked, or sorry, when I asked about the trees, when I asked about the kids, I got this man holding a coin, but it came reversed. So it reminds me of like a person like letting go of something valuable, like what we were just talking about, like losing children or yeah, maybe I wonder if like they're children that have passed. But yeah, there's definitely like an energy of something like a valuable loss to the man or to the person.
But it is okay. Here's the theory, because what I think
Okay.
is happening that both you and I are getting a very confusing message, and it's like making slightly too little sense almost.
Okay.
And for me, what I'm trying to do is just decipher, and what I'm getting is that they're most likely connected to trees and like tree spirits, or associated
Okay.
with like a forest type dwelling, forest spirits. But what I got in my head, like an image of them taking care of unwanted children. Like if a child gets lost in the
Um,
wild, almost like they carry it and tend for it and make sure that it's safe. Because my
okay.
pendulum is just
Okay.
going wild.
Yeah. Okay, that theory I can go with. And that coming up with this, card that I got kind of, yeah, letting something go. But yeah, maybe I just need to look more into that. So it's like I got the letting the thing, like letting the person go, and then you're getting like, oh, but he's kind of like scooping them up and leading them, where they meant to be, kind of like welcoming them to the forest and yeah, to dwell there. Um,
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Let me actually ask as well. Do they harm people? I'm gonna ask for that.
oh, interesting.
This almost feels like they harm psychologically because they can scare the living shit out of you, but not physically. That's how the pendulum swings.
Not physically. I got like do they harm people? And I got the Eight of Wands reverse, which to me kind of gives this energy of like sending them in different directions in an uncomfortable way, or yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like we were saying earlier, like on the wrong path. But also the Eight of Wands, it's like they make people run.
Yes.
So it's like if you've seen something and then you just like and you run, and then all of a sudden you're like in the middle of the rainforest and you don't recognize anything, and you're like, oh gosh, like how do I get
Because
out? Lots of confusing like
yeah,
energy.
because native ones is like still movement, but slowed down movement. So it's almost like
Mm,
they stole you along on your journey to where you're supposed to be going by sort of
mm,
tricking you to go in a different direction and losing track and then having to find your way back.
hmm.
Makes sense. I like that. Okay. That's interesting.
But I wonder too, like with these kids, because I got like the Eight of Cups reversed for them, like coming in with this Princess of Swords, like the kids, Princess of Swords, a Page of Swords.
Hmm.
So it's like, are they stopping the kids from going to heaven or going to back to spirit? Because it almost feels like when you're in the forest, it's like you're trapping them as like an elemental at that point.
Hmm. Okay. Let's see. Let's check for that.
Okay. Oh wow. I was asking like, is it an elemental? Is it an elemental? And I got this card that says attachment and it's like got a ghost on it.
Hmm. The pendulum is
So
also
yeah, it's
pointing
almost
towards
like
yes.
they're attaching that soul into the forest, into the elemental, into that energy.
Yeah.
Um yeah, like the forest, I'm just getting like this feeling of like just being so rich with so much different energy. It's like the dead, the unseen can definitely exist there because there's so much energy that they can use. And maybe, yeah, these new people coming in kind of like re-energizes
Yeah.
this the Tikbalang
But it
and kind of
almost
keeps them going, gives them a job.
but it almost feels like it's like a version of paradise. Like it's not a thing up in the sky in the heavens, but it's almost like here on earth, like that forest, like having a different dimension to it that's rich and just
Mm,
full of life and lavish. And I don't know. It kind of the word that or the sentence that I got is like we don't need to go to a so-called heaven because the heaven is
yeah.
there in the forest.
Mm. And then that makes sense too with being protector of trees, because if you have people coming in and taking the trees, that would disturb that forest dimension. That would disturb the energy there.
Yeah.
And that would make sense. Like if you're a lumberjack going in to cut down a big tree and then they kind of scare you off, or you get lost and you're like, I'm not going back in there.
True,
They're
true.
kind of, yeah, doing their job to protect, but it's almost like they need the trees to hold their dimension together.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. Because trees
Yeah.
are holding, like, it takes a tree to grow a really, really long time. So, as you said, like, considering the amount of energy that would be gathered over the years from
Mm.
like people walking by and touching it or talking to it or just animals and different spiritual
And the earth
energies.
itself, right? Because you're
Yeah,
taking the energy from Gaia, right? It's
it's
because
literally
the
an
roots
extension
go
of
down
Gaia.
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Huh.
mean, we know trees are amazing. They can, the mycelium networks that they collect energy and information from all over the forest, from the entire rainforest. So they would talk to each other and they'd be able to send this tick belong, to where it needs to go to, yeah, to try to protect that ecosystem. But it's like a dimensional ecosystem. And when you're
Literally.
talking about like elemental beings like fairies and gnomes and, different things that live in the forest in so what we call different dimensions, this tick belong kind of fits into that category for me. But it's just, maybe a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's like that island effect of like having like, these big animals still existing. It's like they have these big folklore spirits that or elementals that are existing there.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of cool.
I like it. I like it. It definitely is the island effect because you have like very specific things and very specific attributes that also can be associated with different myths and different legends from across the globe, but they have like their own specific variation of it. I like
Yeah.
that.
And it's
Okay.
neat too how it's like it feels different from the Aswang, where the Aswang's intentions was to instill fear and feed off fear.
Mm-hmm.
The Tikbalang, the intention feels different. It's like to maintain and to welcome in, yeah, like those lost
Yeah.
souls to invite them in. And it kind of reminds me of like the fairies a little bit. It's like
Yeah.
they're there and they do good and all of that, but also you don't want to mess with them.
Because I
You don't
think,
want to anger them. You don't
yeah.
want to disrupt them.
Have
So it
you
feels the same.
have you ever come across the any of the Oracle decks by Brian Froud?
I don't think so.
So he and his wife are both writers slash artists. Like he's a painter, and he has a deep connection with the fairy realm. And you have like different fairy decks and stuff like that. But when you see his artwork, it's so, for some reason, for me personally, it just feels so realistic because it's not just like little humanoid like girls or boys with wings and pretty. You have like
Mm,
different creatures and things, and some of them are super humanoid, some of them are like a mix between an animal and a human and something completely different and like a tree thing. um
mhm.
and I believe that in one of the cards that I have from the fairies oracle, there is a representation of a human looking creature with a horse head. um
Oh,
and it literally goes right along with that. And it's a fairy
wow.
spirit. It's a I would have to look through the deck to find exactly what the name is. um but there is a fairy spirit like that, so it would make sense
Yeah.
if it's
And
like a
like when we
fairy
say
realm.
like when we say elementals, it's like they live from the energy of the elements on Earth, which earth, air, fire, and water. Um, so there's like different attributes of the that energy that yeah feeds them or maintains them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like yeah they recycle that and they're able to exist on that without like yeah crossing over to the light or to heaven or whatever you want to call it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like they're willing to yeah live that on earth and use that the earth's energy.
Hmm. I like it. So we are almost at an hour. Should we do
Okay.
one more or do we close here? Because we did about like
um
45 minutes, I think, at this point.
Yeah. If you want, I can do like a quick little thing about this other one that I have called the
Mm-hmm.
Batibat.
Yes, I heard of that one when you mentioned that you found that one, and I'm like, I just need to hear about it, if nothing else. I just want to know what it is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm like, where did I hear that word? Because it's like it's kind of fun to say, Batibat, kind of like the Tikbalang.
Oh,
But when I first heard it, I was like, where did I hear this? But it was somebody on, you remember the Sabrina the Teenage Witch show?
yes, I
Like the new
would.
one?
Yeah, Chilling
There was
Adventures of
someone named
Sabrina,
Batibat, and
the
it was
demon,
like, yeah, and it was like one of the demons.
the
So
dream demon.
that was really interesting. The
Yes,
dream demon, exactly.
there we
So
go.
this is
Yeah.
actually pulling from the Filipino folklore because this is one of their stories is about the Batabat. And again, we're mentioning trees. It's a tree dwelling spirit. It's often depicted as a really obese female, like really fat, and it has to do with sleep paralysis and nightmares.
Ooh.
So it's said that the Batabat it can be provoked when somebody takes down a big tree and they use it particularly for their home. So it's like you take a tree and then you build a house with it. It's going to haunt you. It
Oh,
also haunts people. It haunts people that are building near their homes. So again, we're talking about this encroaching on the forest, taking from the forest, not respecting the forest kind of vibe. But also, it is. attributed to people just dying in their sleep. So if you take like a healthy person and they have some kind of like heart event and they don't wake up the next day, people say the Batibat can, like, because she's so fat, she can just sit on your chest and kill any like strong man, lady, child, whatever. Nobody can like basically push her off. Um,
Ooh.
One of the things that it said that you can do if you wake up from it, like if you're lucky enough to realize it's happening, you're supposed to bite on your thumb or wiggle your toes to kind of
Okay.
escape her nightmare.
So that, but
So
that's just sleep paralysis.
it is, yeah. So it's like it's kind of that's like one of their explanations for sleep paralysis is the Batibat kind of like sitting on you and physically like not allowing you to physically move.
Oh,
So creepy.
I like it. So should we just ask real quick, like if this is like the sleep paralysis then just personified? Because that's the
Sure.
feeling that I'm
Yeah.
getting. So Pendulum says yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get this part about like being assertive. It's like it's nothing like I said, I think you can like, accidentally like build your house beside one of their homes. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like they will try to push you back out. It's like this feeling of, yeah, like pushing, like you don't belong. And what about like the death, like people dying in their sleep? I wonder if she is like responsible for that because a lot of people that report this, it's like they don't have health problems. They're health, they're completely healthy people, but they just don't wake up.
Hmm.
And I don't know. For
Who's
that,
calling in
I
me
got
now?
the wheel of
Shit.
pardon.
Oh, sorry. No, somebody's calling me and I'm like, I forgot. Oh shit. Okay.
So for that, I got the Wheel of Fortune reverse. So I don't know if it was like, I feel like it's not really her killing the people. I feel like it's just kind of their time to go. Um, I think she's more so like a psychologically wants to terrorize you and do the sleep paralysis thing, but I don't feel like she's killing. But I don't know. What do you think?
No, it's also no for me. Doesn't feel like she would be killing. It's
Really?
more of a
Mm.
psychological like torture thing aspect of like
Okay.
nightmares and stuff like that.
I would, yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I get too, like from these cards. It's like, but I can understand why the Batty Bat would be an explanation for that stuff because it's like, yeah, if they're able to make you freeze and not be able to move, then like why couldn't they, go ahead and like stop somebody's heart? But yeah, so I feel like that part of the story may have just kind of been lumped in just to give an explanation to things that naturally happen to people.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that can, kill someone. It could be like, a brain aneurysm, a stroke. Like there's so many things, right, that can kill someone in their sleep, whether they're healthy or not.
Mm-hmm.
It does still happen, and there is no explanation for it. But the cards are kind of saying like you're just getting the short end of the stick. It was just your
Literally.
time.
Like over here, whenever like in like maybe 30, 40 years ago, like my grandmother's and grandfather's generation, like whenever somebody would die and they were relatively healthy, and it's like they wouldn't really go into the explanation of like, oh, he had a heart attack, or she had a brain aneurysm or whatever. It would just be like the saying was, the god's whip struck them, and that was that.
Ah,
And
That's
that's
great.
it.
Just that's it. No
That's it. No
explanation needed.
explanation. It's like the funeral's at 3 on Monday. What
Yeah,
happened? God's whip struck them, and that's that. Nothing else. Which I
the
kind of
whip.
like.
You
Is
were
like
whipped.
you were who whipped,
Uh,
whipped out of your
um,
body.
Yeah, I really think like I got a few more cards and they're all swords. So that to
Hmm.
me is that mental energy. We got the I was asking like what is the Batibat's intention with interacting with people, and I got the Queen of Swords. So she just needs to say what she needs to say. I got the Four of Swords reversed. So they're like getting you up off your ass, off your bed.
Hmm.
Like they're trying to get you to move. They're trying to get you to think of things differently. And then also the Six of Swords, like moving away, like get the F out of my space.
Yeah, that makes a lot. Yeah.
Go to a calmer place. Like this place is taken. I want to exist here. She feels very territorial. But again, I think it links back to the forest and the protection of the forest and all of the, like, obviously there's lots of elementals there. There's different dimensions there. And the seen and the unseen. And I just feel like she is a keeper of that. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know what else to really say about her. She just really wants to mentally like F you up so that you get the hell out.
Yeah, it makes sense, like sort of protecting that spiritual realm, which the forest is sort of a almost like a physical manifestation of, or the boundary between that. I like that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
I
that's
like how that
interesting.
you explain that.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I guess we did some interesting ones today. We have more, so if you would maybe like to hear a part two of Filipino mythology, because there is
Mm.
so much more to explore, we can definitely dive back in at some point in the future. Um, very, very lovely for you to have tuned in, dear listener. And we would love to hear your opinion, any stories, any experiences, if you have any, or if you know somebody that has any Filipino background or has any stories, has any experiences. We would definitely love to hear about that down in the comments. Thank you for joining us once again. And I guess until the next one.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you.